Hi folks, this is Azuarc. I am recording this video mostly as an excuse for getting to play with OBS, which I've just recently downloaded, so apologies on the quality and whatever, but I'm taking this excuse to review the cards that are in the new set of Hearthstone coming out, Rise of Shadows, and we are going to start with the neutrals, because why wouldn't you start with the neutrals? I'm really not sure why people go right to the class cards. You kind of want to know what the baseline of the set is first. So we're going to look at the neutrals. This is via Disguised Toast that we're looking here. For some reason, they break the neutrals down into the rarity, so you're going to see me scroll around in weird order. Apologies. To start off with, we've got Traveling Healer. 4 mana, 3/2, Divine Shield, restore 3 health. Borderline playable. Cthulhu's Chosen was a 4 mana 4/2 Divine Shield, which saw a little bit of play even outside of Cthulhu decks. The fact that this one has additional healing is nice. I don't know that for what it does, though, that it's not a little too slow. I mean, it's kind of a weird aggro stopgap. It can maybe eat 2 minions while restoring just a pinch of health to keep you alive. I think it feels too slow to me, although in the meta that we've got coming based on what this set projects, we're not going to have aggro or control so much as just slow, grindy value. And if that really proves to be the case, then Traveling Healer will probably be okay. I don't think it'll see play, but I think it's on the border of being playable. Next, Evil Cable Rat, 2 mana, 1/1, Beast, add a lackey. I really don't know what to make of lackeys. I don't know how good they are. They feel like a super spare part, basically, because you get a 1/1 with them, and the effects are stronger than spare parts. And obviously, it's better than like +1 attack or +1 defense, to get Evolve, for instance, or summon a random 2-drop. But basically, now you're paying 3 mana for a pair of 1/1s, one of which has an effect that's worth about 1 mana. And that doesn't feel quite right to me. I honestly don't think it feels that good, and right now there's only one card in the entire set that has anything to do with if you have a lackey or for the number of lackeys you have or anything like that. So I'm not as high on lackeys as maybe some other people are. I'm probably going to end up eating those words. Lackeys look like they're potentially really good, but I don't think that Evil Cable Rat justifies itself very well. Hench Clan Hogsteed, 2/1 Rush, summon a Murloc for 2. This seems really good. As far as neutral, common, throwaway cards go, this is actually really decent. Because you're getting 3/2 of stats, it's split into 2 packets, and most of that damage is fast. So, even though it's maybe not good for a standard aggro deck in the conventional sense, I think it's actually going to be a very playable card. It's sticky, it gives you stuff. I think it can actually work. I think this is a playable card. I think it will, in fact, see its way into decks. Dalaran Librarian, 2 mana, 2/3, silence adjacent minions. A weird effect. We saw it used in the final stream to good effect with a Silence Priest deck. If Silence Priest is a thing, this card's going to see some use. Otherwise, it's a River Crocolisk that maybe has upside. So I'm not confident on this one, but okay, maybe. Again, that's really going to depend on how viable Silence Priest is. Potion Vendor, 1 mana, 1/1, restore 2 health. This looks like a very good supplement for Heal Zoo. I mean, Happy Ghoul is still a card, I'm pretty sure. And when you think about what those early Heal Zoo decks do, where they want to damage themselves quick, yeah, no, you're not going to play Potion Vendor on 1, but you don't need to play it on 1. What you need is to have a cheap way of getting your health back, and this does just as well as playing a 3 mana 2/2 that does the same thing. So I think Potion Vendor is going to definitely see play. I haven't been giving these star ratings, but I think that one's a very playable card. Call it a 4-star card. It's got some definite upside to it for being so cheap for what it does. Proud Defender, 2/6, gets +2 attack while you have no other minions. Taunt. Now, if it had been if you have no other minions on a battle cry, I think this would have been really good, because it would allow you to put it out there and then reload your board behind it, potentially. So, as a 4/6 that can protect other stuff, I think it's very good. If it is 2/6 when you play another minion, though, which it is, suddenly you're dealing with a Stegodon, and Stegodons are not so great. So, considering Taunt is going to get attacked before other minions you put out, it's not like your opponent is going to produce. They're not going to kill off your other minions for you, so this is just garbage as far as I'm concerned. I am worried about the lack of decent taunts and other protective cards in the set. So, alright, this is a thing. It's a 6 health taunt, but I still don't feel good about it. Mana Reservoir, 06, spell damage 1. I think if you're going to print a 2-mana spell damage card, this is the way to do it. That said, I have no idea if spell damage is going to be good in this set. It definitely seems like it's an angle they're trying to push. You see it in Hunter, you see it in Mage with some of the cards. So I definitely think that Blizzard intends for spell damage to be effective, but honestly, I feel really leery when spell damage does become effective because it usually comes in the form of Malygos. So if you can make spell damage work without Malygos, that means that there's going to be a Malygos deck that just crushes things. And there's always a way to cheat Malygos. So my instincts are to say that there probably will not be anything decent for spell damage, really, when you get down to it. There's not a lot of cheaty effects that have entered play as a result of this set. So, and yeah, there's a couple spells. There's like the Hunter Twin spell that does 1 damage for 1 mana, but I don't think you're going to see much in the way of strong spell damage effects. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe this will be a great card. Ultimately, I don't think this is any better than Kobold, though, because if you're trying to do a spell damage burst, it doesn't matter what the stats are, it just matters that you get it out onto the board. Mana Reservoir is something where you're playing it on turn 2 in the hopes of keeping it in play, and again, not any better than Kobold. Soldier of Fortune, 4 mana, 5/6, elemental. When this minion attacks, gives your opponent a coin. Giving your opponent a coin is generally bad. You're getting what is effectively a 5-cost pit fighter for a 1 mana discount. So if you give your opponent 1 coin, then it's fair. I don't know that it's actually fair, but you're getting this overstated minion with the hopes of being able to attack with it more than once, which means you are handing your opponent the bonus here. There may be some shenanigans where you fill an opponent's hand with coins and other garbage, and then they burn stuff, but that doesn't seem very good, and it's going to be burning 1 card at a time, so because there's absolutely no way to make your opponent draw. So I'm not seeing it. It's an elemental. Maybe that's a thing. I doubt it. Safeguard, 6 mana, 4/5. Death Rattle, put an 0/5 taunt into play. I think this is an excellent card. I don't know if it will be good enough to stem the tide of aggro, considering how late it hits, but I think it's a very good card. I think it's the spiritual successor to cards like Sludge Belcher. 4/5 into an 0/5, and probably ways to bring this thing back. It's worth noting it is a mech with Death Rattle, which there are some cards that are going to be caring about that. I see Safeguard as maybe being this, Hunter card that's looking for a mech Death Rattle. I don't think that that's really what that deck wants to do, but at least there's the option. It's definitely a good wall, though. 10 points of health plus for for 6 mana is definitely a pretty decent deal. Yeah, only half of it is going to be able to fight back, per se. The other half just kind of takes your blows. But the fact that it's one after the other is really good. Unless silencing becomes really big in this set. I'm not seeing anything right now that makes me feel like silence is going to be a big part of the meta. At least not on opponent minions, so we'll see. But I think Safeguard's going to be a safe bet. Sunreaver Spy, 2/3. If you control a secret, it becomes a 3/4. I think this is excellent in Paladin. Going turn 1 Secret, turn 2 Sunreaver Spy is going to be a very solid play. Whether or not it's going to work in other classes, that's a little tougher to decide because it's not going to be played on curve. Playing a 3/4 off curve is not necessarily as good. but expect to see a Secret Paladin deck running this. I think that Secret Paladin is definitely an angle they're pushing, and it might have the guts to be able to make a deck out of. Arcane Servant, 2 mana, 2/3 elemental, pack filler. It's a River Croclus that isn't a beast. Burly Shovel Fist, 9/9 rush for 9. We've seen a 10/10 rush for 9. It wasn't phrased that way. It was Ice Howl, which is charge cannot attack heroes, which in that regard makes Burly Shovel Fist even better than Ice Howl. That said, Ice Howl was pretty bad and nobody played him. I don't know that this is any better. This will be an excellent arena card when you just want a giant stat stick at the end. The fact that it's 9 mana 9/9 with some fastness to it, though, means that I wouldn't completely dismiss this card. I'm not going to say it's like a 3-star card or anything, but it's not a joke either. It's not just blind pack filler. This is a card that, has value, and when we talk about random generation effects and things like that, if you evolve an 8 cost into this 9, you won't feel too bad about that. So I think it's a good card to exist. Is it a card I'm going to run? Probably not, but who knows? Maybe there's a Rush Warrior deck that was looking for some big heavy hitters at the end, and now it's got one. Dalaran Crusader, 5/4 Divine Shield for 5. That feels too slow to me, just my gut's instinct. I mean, if you can't play a 3/1 Divine Shield for 3, I don't know that a 5/4 for 5 is going to be any better. It doesn't have anything else going for it. It's not like the Tauren that's 4/5 Taunt for 6. That is actually on the edge of playing just because it has Taunt and uses that Divine Shield well. Dalaran Crusader, well, if you can get a slow, grindy, mid-range deck and all you care about is getting a bunch of stats onto the board, in a sort of an arena feel, Dalaran Crusader is great. And I think it will see frequently being picked in arena, but for constructed, I don't think that's a thing. Eccentric Scribe, 6/4, summon 4/1/1 Vengeful Scrolls. I'm assuming, I don't actually know, but I'm assuming these Vengeful Scrolls are just random 1/1s. If that's the case, you're getting a lot of value off of Eccentric Scribe. Is it enough to justify? Well, it's going to depend on the meta, and I just got done saying Dalaran Crusader is going to be too slow. In that environment, Eccentric Scribe will be as well. But you're getting a lot of little bodies on that Eccentric Scribe when it dies, and if you're playing some sort of tokenish strategy, this is not an absurd card to have. I don't think that a true token deck is going to want to run it, but Eccentric Scribe, maybe. Not likely. Faceless Rager, 3 mana, 5/1, copy of friendly minions help. I think this is a very cool take on Ragers. Ragers have always been a meme card. We've always had one in like every block of sets, and they've always been the 3 mana 5/1 with some slight twist. The Ice Rager was 5/2. The Amgam Rager had stealth. This one shores up the weakness of the health by saying, no, I'm taking that health over there. And I think that that's a great way to do it. The fact that it's friendly minion does limit this considerably because you'd love to be able to copy another minion's health. Of course, that would lead to a lot of priest shenanigans with Divine Shield, not Divine Shield, the combo stuff. But I think that Faceless Rager is borderline playable in the right deck. In a Silence deck, it's actually really good because those Silence decks are running these big, mostly big health minions that also have decent attack. But I think that there's the potential for it to see play. I don't think it's going to be likely, but it could. Flightmaster, 3/4, give each player a 2/2. I don't get this card. I don't understand the point of it. I don't know what that 2/2 is going to be good for. Yes, there are cases where you want to have something to trade into, and therefore forcibly summoning a minion for your opponent. Okay, yeah, maybe, but not likely. I don't think it's good at all. 3 mana 3/3 stealth in Henge Clan Sneak is pack filler. That said, 2 mana 2/3 stealth did see a tiny little bit of play once upon a time. That was a very different meta. However, we might be going back to something like that. So I'm not going to say that the Henge Clan Sneak won't see play. Being able to stick a stealth minion that is not poorly statted and that you might be able to use to leverage some effects in your hand. That might be a thing. So I think 3 mana for that is higher than we're looking for. I think a 2 mana 2/2 would be more likely for what I'm describing, but I'm not going to rule it out. Heroic Innkeeper, 8 mana 4/4 taunt, +2/+2 for each other friendly minion. The flavor of this one feels strange to me, Heroic Innkeeper, but hey, whatever. So this is really expensive. 8 mana to protect your other minions or just to be a giant stat stick. Feels a little off, but then you look at the upside and you realize that this could grow to as large as a 16/16. So I think that it's a good alternative card if you don't have the card you were actually looking for to put in your deck when you're looking for a replacement for some big legendary. You go, oh, well, you know what? In this particular deck, Heroic Innkeeper might actually be a decent substitute. I don't think it's a primary card that anybody's going to want to run. I could be proven wrong on this entirely. It could be fantastic in a zoo or a token deck, but it looks like it's slow for a deck that wants to create a lot of presence on board. That's my instinct. And so it looks like it's going to be an 8 mana 6/6 taunt, probably. So I'm taking a pass on this one. I'll leave it possible that I completely whiff, but I'm calling Heroic Innkeeper a non-factor. Spellbook Binder, 2 mana 3/2, good stats to begin with. If you have spell damage, draw a card. So there's upside on this, but it's a 2 mana 3/2. Hard to argue with that. I don't know that having spell damage is going to be a plausible thing. We just got done seeing the Mana Reservoir, and I don't think there's a whole lot of other really good spell damage cards that are likely to be trotted out there. So I don't think this is a card you're going to see play on turn 2 and get that spell damage bonus. Is it worth trying to make work later to say, well, it's a 2 mana 3/2, but it still has potential upside later in the game? I don't think so. I think we got to toss this one. Violet Spellsword, 4 mana 1/6 gain attack for each spell in your hand is not bad. It's Violet Drake, but instead of 4 health, it has 6. On the other hand, it only triggers off of spells. And I think that's a pretty limiting factor. You won't feel bad about this card if you can get at least it to a 4/6. So, I mean, that may not be that hard, or maybe it will be. I don't know. It depends on what kind of decks are being run. If you're doing a spell mage deck that just happens to trot this out there on 4 and it becomes a 6/6 or something, and that's a decent threat your opponent has to deal with, okay, maybe. I'm going to say there's a niche for it, but I don't think it's going to be a likely played card. Violet Warden, 4/7 taunt spell damage, which is a weird combination, taunt and spell damage. Because taunt says, attack this minion, and spell damage says, I'm about to do something awful, so attack this minion. What you would rather have is have it give taunt to something else, but you know what? 4/7 for 6 is a little under what you want, but to have a 7 health spell damage that also potentially blocks for the sort of deck that spell damage often runs where they might get beat up a bunch in the early game, to have a big taunt that can also be spell damage is not as absurd as it sounds. I think it's still pack filler, but I wouldn't laugh at someone for running it if it was in the right deck. And then we got Toxfin. Give a friendly Murloc poisonous 4/1. That is fantastic. That is exactly one of the things that a Murloc deck needs, because when they start to get behind, they have no way of dealing with big minions other than hoping to build a board and come back. But if you can get a rush Murloc, or if you've got one already on board, the Toxfin ensures that you can remove that big threat that's serving to wall off your minions or completely knock you in the face. So I think that's a great card. All right, scrolling up, we got the rares. Spellward Jeweler, 3 mana 3/4. Hero can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. It's a really weird disruption because I don't know if we're going to see that much in the way of intent to hit a hero's face with spells or hero powers. There's certainly nothing in the way of hero powers that jumps at me with this. Yeah, if you got Zul'jin out, he can't hit your hero. but I don't know how much burn there really is in this. I know there's all this supposed spell power theme, but I don't think it's going to work. It just doesn't feel like it's coming together. Yeah, there is a world where you have a hunter that has Thoradol out, attacks with it, and then goes kill command, arcane shot, uh, the new twin spell times 2, and hits you for 28 damage. The likelihood of pulling that off is not very good, assembling those pieces without needing to use any of them. So I don't think it's going to be likely. Yeah, it could be a situation where you play this and you save yourself from getting blown out by kill command one turn, but then you get blown out by kill command the next turn. So I don't see what the purpose of this card is, unless there's going to be something really ridiculous in the way of combos that you're trying to time and specifically produce. The fact that it's for only one turn doesn't really ring to me as a situation where you're going to be able to protect yourself. And this is coming from the perspective of someone who's played a lot of Valera the Hollow and would very frequently save playing Valera specifically for that one turn of stealth, and sometimes duck a quest mage going off for one turn, and that was, the difference. You're not going to see a lot of effects like that right now, so I don't think Spellward Jeweler's a thing, but it does merit talking about it a little bit. Another card that merits talking about a little bit to describe why it's not good is Hecklebot. 3/8 taunt for 4, and it summons a minion, it recruits a minion, basically, for your opponent. And this is all kinds of bad. I will concede that it will get your opponent towards fatigue a little faster. Fatigue is not going to be a factor in this expansion. If fatigue starts to be a factor, there are cards that allow you to suddenly put another 10 cards in your library. Hecklebot, on the other hand, is super risky because you play it and your opponent gets let's say on average, a 3/4. That means that you're not getting that much value out of your 4-mana taunt when you get down to it. There's the potential that, maybe you only get a 1/1, or you get some battle cry minion out that you were really hoping to dodge. It might also be that you manage to play this later in the game, and you've got the removal ready to take out a very vital link in a deck, like a Malagos or something, but more often than not, you're going to end up summoning something on 4 that you really don't want to deal with. I can definitely see this hitting on a Jumbo Imp or something like that, and Hecklebot is, I guess, it's a card that needs to exist, but it's not the answer to combo decks that we're looking for. It's oh god, we really have to have something, so I guess we run Hecklebot, but it is no Dirty Rat, and it is no Deathlord. It is just a bad card. Exotic Mount Seller, 7 mana, 5/8, cast a spell, get a random 3-cost beast. I think it's plausible to play this card. I think the difference between this and like Gadget Zan Auctioneer, aside from the fact that Gadget Zan costs 6, is that Gadget Zan, its effect when you cast a spell is to continue to fuel your hand so that you have more spells. Whereas Exotic Mount Seller, you've got to have those in hand ahead of time, which is going to make this really hard to get out. I think that outside of maybe a Warlock that's tapping consistently and has a bunch of cheap spells and just throws this in, I don't think Exotic Mount Seller works. Yes, I'll call it a better Illidan, but I don't think that it's going to get a lot of effect here. 7 is just a little too late for this thing to come down, even though it's got pretty good stats for a onboard passive effect. I don't think it'll see play. It could. I'll allow that for that possibility, but I don't think so. Arcane Watcher, 3 mana, 5/6, can't attack unless you have spell damage, which is basically a translation for 3 mana, 5/6, you have to play Silence on this card. Because spell damage, no. I don't think that that's really a realistic goal. I don't think any deck that's running spell damage is going to be thinking about running this card. I think that the upside for silencing is okay. It's an Arcane Watcher. For another mana, you get +1/+1, and there's the possibility it could attack under certain niche conditions, but not really. Mad Summoner. Fill each board with 1/1 imps, and I think that there are cases where a Warlock deck might want to use this. We see things like Jumbo Imp, and there is a way for Warlock on 10 specifically to play this and then wipe out the opponent's imps. I think the other plausible application is to fill up the board on a turn where your opponent already has a lot of minions out, although you're in a bad situation if that's the case. And they'll probably just trade in anyway with their larger minions and wipe out all your imps or something like that. But I think that there is a place where this card could get used. I'm not sure what it is entirely because, there's an argument to be made that Onyxia does what this does, but better. Higher stats, yeah, a couple more mana, but it doesn't give your opponent any of the minions as well. Sunreaver Warmage looks like it has the potential to be a really good card. This is one I'm not going to poo-poo. 5 mana, 4/4, deal 4 is on par with 5 mana, 5/3, deal 3 if you're, holding a dragon. This one's if you're holding a spell that's expensive, which, at least in Big Spell Mage, which we've seen recently be a deck, that seems plausible. I think there will be other decks, other classes that will try to do something like this. Whether or not they'll be any good, I don't know. They don't have nearly as many tools for trying to influence a large thing, but we can try it. Portal Keeper, 5/2 for 4, shuffles 2/2 demons with Rush. I think is a very cool effect. I think it's neat. That said, having a 2/2 with Rush pop out of your deck is not nearly as good as having a 4/4 pop out of your deck. So I don't think that this is anywhere near as good as the Spiders. The fact that they come out with Rush, yeah, okay, maybe, but they're little, right? And there is another portal card, and you could attain a certain critical mass with these things, but unless you're doing a deck that's themed entirely around shuffling garbage into your deck, which, yeah, there could be a thing like that, but I don't think this is going to see play at all. Not even in like Arena or something like that. Recurring Villain, 5 mana, 3/6. If this minion has 4 more attack, resummon it. I love this card. I don't think it's good, but I love it for its flavor. I think it's a really neat card. I love that it has the twirling mustache and everything. Where this card could see use is in Shaman if you can get a Flame Tongue down. Because if you get this minion out and then you put a Flame Tongue behind it to buff it, you attack, it dies, and if you're lucky with board placement, it then appears on the other side of the Flame Tongue totem, at which point it still has 4 more attack. And if you can protect your Flame Tongue, then this could get some value. But I mean, even if you get it back just once, right, you're talking about a pair of 3/6s for 5. So if you can pull off just that narrow requirement of +1 attack, this is actually pretty good. Think about it. You're getting like 6/12 of stats for 5. Yes, it's slow and grindy, and I need to see how slow and grindy the meta will be. But if it's slow and grindy enough, this is certainly a card I would keep on my radar as something that could be played. Tunnel Blaster, 3/7, deals 3 to everything. Reminds us of, my brain is escaping, Chillmaw, except it doesn't have a requirement. So it's just outright nuke the board, is 1 more health, is 3 less attack, but it doesn't have any hard requirements on it. So a 7 mana, 3/7 torch the board is a great way of fending off aggro if you can make it to 7. If you can get this far with it, I have a feeling that Tunnel Blaster will be extremely effective. If it starts being a card, aggro is definitely going to have to start running silence effects, which waters down their decks a little bit. But it is a very good answer to that. And Underbelly Ooze, Patron is back, kinda. I'm not going to dismiss this card. I think it's bad. I think it's probably not going to see play. I think it's garbage. But we all thought the same thing might have been true about Patron, and then suddenly it was a real thing. Getting a limitless supply of 3/5s is even better than the limitless supply of 3/3s. Now, this costs 2 more. I don't think this is quite comparable to Patron, but the effect obviously is. If you could get some sort of circumstance where you started trading off on these things, or if you got like a Defile running or something like that, yeah, Underbelly Ooze could be pretty damn cool. But if there is a deck that's going to work off of this thing, the problem is that this just comes down seriously late in the game. So, all right, epics. Batterhead, 312 rush and can continue to kill things. And I looked at this card and I went, wow, hi Fool's Bane, because that's basically what this is. It's Fool's Bane, but neutral and in minion form. You don't have to smash your face into things. It comes with 12 health. In the right situation, this card could be fantastic. It could wipe out an entire opposing board of 7 minions. Where I see this card really getting play, though, is in priest combo decks. We've seen them with a Mosh Og Enforcer, where they had like the 212 Divine Shield Taunt, which was really good, but it was passive. This is more aggressive, and so depending on what kinds of threats that priest is going to be dealing with, having a rush that can go pew, 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 and take out a whole bunch of stuff proactively might be better than having a very passive Divine Shield Taunt minion. So that is the one place where I really see this card as possibly having a place, and I think that those decks are going to take a hard look at Batterhead. And depending on how things shake out in the meta, it just might be their go-to for clearing out boards, along with all the other priest tools like Mass Hysteria. Unseen Saboteur, 6 mana, 5/6. This is a card that's very important to have exist. It's a very expensive effect, but you're getting basically a pit fighter with a cost of 1 additional to produce this very, very powerful effect, right? Because, first of all, your opponent's spells that they play might do literally nothing, or they might backfire if they are played at a time not of their choosing. They might outright fizzle in the sense that, you play like a Savage Roar, let's say, and then Savage Roar does nothing because it's triggered on your turn rather than your opponent's turn. That said, just being able to keep your opponent from calling their own shots might be really good. If an opponent is holding a spell, they either just picked it up and didn't have the chance to play it yet, or it's a tactical card. And getting tactical cards out of your opponent's hand is probably never a bad thing. I think Unseen Saboteur has a lot of potential. It's just a matter of which decks are prepared to devote a deck slot for it. I think that's also going to be very meta-dependent on, is there a single specific spell or two that's kind of dominating the meta that we really need to have an answer for that this will respond to. Because obviously it wouldn't answer like an Ultimate Infestation or a Plague. Those aren't cards that are going to work real well with this, but there are cards that this will absolutely eat alive. So I think Unseen Saboteur is a very important card to exist, and I think that there will become pocket metas where this card will see play. Big Bad Archmage, 10 mana, 6/6, summon 6. Dear God, is this card scary? But it's bad. It's going to be fantastic in Arena. It's going to be great in a top deck war, but if your opponent has any way to answer, if they are not completely just like scrabbling for resources, this is going to do nothing. It's okay, yeah, it's going to give you a 6 cost, so I guess I shouldn't completely dismiss it, right? Let's say an average 6 drop randomly generated is like 5/5 in stats. So you're getting maybe 11/11 off the gate plus more value generation long term. So maybe I'm being unfair, but I feel like for 10 mana, this is really slow, and you need something even bigger impact than this for 10 mana. 10 mana is like Ultimate Infestation. 10 mana is like, the old gods. 10 mana is not summon a 6/6, or summon a 6-drop randomly. So, compare this to, say, like Spiteful Priest, or Spiteful Summoner, rather, and I think that this just doesn't hold up as well. Henge Clan Hag. Henge Clan Hag. 4 mana, 3/3 with 2 amalgams, and I think that this is actually a really cool card. I think it's a fantastic card because you're getting 5/5 for stats spread across 3 minions, and 2 of them have all tribes on them. And so if you can get all tribes, then that means that this fits into a theme deck. If you're going for some sort of token strategy, this gets 3 minions out on board, which maybe it's not the best way to get 3 minions out on board, but it works. It gives you a decent amount of stats for what you're playing. I think that this is going to be a card that sees play. It's going to see play in maybe a Murloc deck, maybe a token Druid, but I definitely think it's a card that is going to come out into play, and you're going to see it. Magic Carpet, 3 mana, 1/6. When you play a 1-drop, give it 1 attack and rush. And the only deck I can see that would even think about running this is Zoo. Because Zoo is going to have an abundance of 1-drops and an abundance of draw, and it is not weird to think that on turn 4 they might play this with a Voidwalker. And then they'll play the next turn and they'll play like a Flame Imp and a couple other little garbage minions because they're continuing to supply themselves with these things. So it's a possible play. I think it's worth experimenting with. I don't think it's going to pan out, but I wouldn't say that it can't. Because Zoo ultimately is a board control deck. And it looks like a rush deck, but it's really a control deck. It's a control the board deck. And with being able to give your minions an attack boost and rush so that they can come out of the hand firing, I would not sleep on this card. I would say that this could very well show up in Zoo. It's not going to fit anywhere else. That is the one single case where Magic Carpet could get used. Azurite Elemental, 2/7 at the start of your turn, gain spell damage +2. Now, I'm not clear on how this works. Is it at the start of your turn, it has spell damage? At the start of your next turn, it has spell damage? Or is it at the start of your turn, it has 2 more spell damage? At the start of your next turn, it has now 4 spell damage. Now it's 6. Because if it's the latter of those 2, then Azurite Elemental is going to be a target. It's going to be a card that has to get killed. If it's just straight spell damage +2, well, 2 spell damage is still a pretty big bullseye, but it's not as big. It's not like this thing's going to keep ballooning out of control like that. There was that one Inspire minion that gained spell damage that, it operated so slowly that nobody cared, but, the fact that there is that potential. So I'm not clear on how this works. That said, I don't know that it matters, right? It's a 5 mana 2/7, which is not a very well statted minion, right? 7 health is a lot, but 2 attack means that if your opponent has anything resembling a board, this card isn't going to last for very long, and there are lots of ways to remove 2 attack minions. So I don't feel like this is going to be anything. It could be proven wrong. It's got a lot of health. It could stick, at which point you go pew pew pew. But I feel like Azurite Elemental is going to be a whiff. Portal Overfiend, this is the better of the 2 Portal demon cards. That said, it's still not very good. Mostly because I don't think those demons with Rush are going to be very good. Having those randomly pop out of your deck, yeah, that's fantastic. And if you need plurality in your deck for the sake of reinforcing other things that are, as you cycle through your deck, things start popping out, okay, great. But I don't think that the 2/2s are as worth it as spiders. So unless you're going to try doing this in a deck that's a class that's not rogue, I don't see why you'd reach for this. And Whirlwind Tempest, 6/6. Give your Wind Fury minions Mega Wind Fury. Dear God, I am amused by this card. I've always thought ever since we had our Voltron card that Mega Wind Fury was really potentially scary. And there's a world where you get a Wind Fury minion down in Shaman, and then you play this, and you put Rockbiter Weapon on your attack minion, and it's got 12 plus 4x. You put this on a Fountain, for instance, which is a card that very well could end up sticking just because of how big it is. And, your opponent's definitely going to want to kill it, but if it does land, that's 4. So 4 plus 3 is 7 times 4 is 28, just for having to let that fountain live for a turn. That would be a hell of a punish. Um, is that going to happen? Probably not. If you manage to make that happen, then your opponent is going to feel really sad about their choices in life. Um, I could see there being game states where that happens, and again, this is really going to be based on how slow is the meta, because uh, there's not these overbearing control elements, and there's not these overbearing aggro elements in this deck, or at least there certainly isn't within the neutrals, as you've seen here. So maybe there's a possibility to get something really slow and gadgety like this out, but Wind Fury cards in general have always been bad, and trying to force one to stick to the board is usually an exercise in frustration. So I don't think it's going to happen. It'd be cool, but it's not even like you can do Rogue Conceal or something like that, and then hit it with a Cold Blood, because that would be a way to do it in Wild, but it's just no. All right, let's look at the legendaries, because here's where we get to have some fun. Chef Nomi. Deck is empty, summon 6/6 Greasefire Elementals. That is a hell of a finisher. That is a massive finisher. Now, the downside, of course, is that you either have a dead card in your hand throughout, or you are playing a 7-mana 6/6. So, early in the game, yeah, it kind of stinks. If you play it with Unstable Element, obviously you can get this thing out way early. And so, if you've got a rogue that plays Unstable Element into Chef Nomi on 5 and then coins 6, that's just game over, right? Like, does anybody realistically have a way to deal with a board full of 6/6s on turn 6? Maybe a warrior might be able to clear the board with that, but I don't think any other class is going to be prepared to handle it. So, yeah, that's a scary thought, and there are going to be some gimmick players who are going to try for that kind of thing. And if there are rogue players out there that have reason to run Unstable Element, they might try tossing Chef Nomi in for giggles. Otherwise, this is going to be, do you want to play a really slow, grinded out game where you take it all the way to fatigue? You're not going to play Chef Nomi in a situation where you are trying to mill through your deck, right? This is not going to be like a Mechathune sort of situation. It could be a backup to Mechathune, if you're worried about your combo getting disrupted, but I feel like the two cards are at odds with one another, so I don't think you'd want to do that. So Chef Nomi has a lot of potential. It's either going to be a ridiculous card, or it's going to be a non-factor completely. And I'm leaning towards non-factor, but I'm not going to say that it can't be. So we'll keep an eye out. We'll remember this card exists, but initially I'm not thinking about it at all. Geppetto Joybuzz. Draw 2 minions, make them 1/1s for 1. I don't know what cards you're playing with this. I'm sure some people have done some theory crafting. I don't know what that is. I haven't looked at it. So I'm going to take a pass on this one. I honestly have no idea. It seems like a really abusable card. And so, if you can pull Malagos out, or you can do something else irritating, okay. But I don't know. I don't feel good about it. It's either going to be an awful combo enabler that we're going to rue its existence, or it's going to be garbage. Archmage Vargoth, or Archmage Vargoth, is a fantastic card. Okay, this is a 5-star card if I saw one, because there are all kinds of crazy things you can do with Vargoth. I really like this card. I see all kinds of ways to exploit the fact that, yes, you don't get to choose the target, but you can play lots of spells that are just simply do good thing for you or have symmetrical effects anyway, and at that point, doubling up on them, Vargoth will definitely appreciate. AE effects are going to be fantastic with this guy. So, your Blizzards, your, I guess not Frost Novas, but say Arcane Explosion type things, not really, can't do Explosive Trap, but Consecration, and lots of draw effects, buff effects. I didn't even think about that one. Oh, geez. You could play Vargoth into, like, Power of the Wild. um, I don't know if that's the best way to get +2/+2, but it works, and if you're sticking this guy to the board, he can do other things as well. So yeah, definitely a good card to play. Archivist Elysiana. This is our anti-fatigue card. And if people are grinding out to fatigue, you've got two options, Chef Nomi or Elysiana, and both of them are perfectly valid ways of saying, I got this. Of the two, I think I prefer Elysiana because Chef Nomi, by the time you hit fatigue, your opponent might have a way to deal with the board. Granted, they've probably tapped themselves out, and that's the last big threat, and it's a hell of a big threat, so I'd be willing to go with Nomi instead, but Elysiana, I think, has better utility. I think it's usable in control settings where you hit the end and you go, I need 10 more cards. The other place, though, where I think Elysiana really shines, and this is a funny case, but I think this is actually good in an aggro deck. Think about the way that Hunter would use Rexxar, right? They play this deck that was, I'm going to ram your face, I'm going to ram your face, I'm charging, and then if you do something where they realize that game plan is not going to work, they had the ability to pivot thanks to Rexxar. That was like the whole point of Rexxar was it said, okay, well, you know what? Your deck now has a new dimension to it. We're going to go off in this other direction for the rest of the game now, and you're going to become a control deck or whatever. Elysiana gives you that flexibility in all classes, right? You just say, I'm going to toss my deck. I know it's that my game plan's not working, or I have a very low % chance of pulling this off. I'd rather be able to pick out a new game plan, and Elysiana lets you then pick out those 5 cards and have them in duplicate. And 10 cards is still a really long time, right? 10 turns is plenty, especially considering this isn't coming down until turn 8 anyway. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to draw through those, so I wouldn't be concerned about the fact that you have reduced your deck to only 10 cards, because at worst you had maybe 18 at the time that you played this anyway. But I think that this is going to be a card that faster decks are going to use as their opportunity to say, well, I'm kind of screwed here, so let's play our wild card. And I think that is actually maybe even more beneficial than the fill up the deck or refill your deck after it's run out. So I think Elysiana is a card that will see play. I don't think it's as safe of a craft as, say, Vargoth would have been if Vargoth wasn't free, but I think that Elysiana is definitely a card you're going to want to have. And then we've got Barista Lynchen, finally. And I like the art on this card, and I like the idea of this card. I was a huge abuser of Zola the Gorgon. I loved Zola. I loved it before the set came out. I thought everyone was underrating it beforehand. I was absolutely thrilled when I opened it on day 1, and I used the hell out of Zola the Gorgon. And from that perspective, I'm going to tell you that Barista Lynchen is no Zola the Gorgon. Because first of all, it's got conditions on which minions you can copy, and second of all, it costs 5. And between those two things, I don't think this card is going to see use. There are cases where I can see where Lynchen would be really good. It's making an argument for, hey, let's make a Pogo Hopper deck. Because if you get a bunch of those on the board and then you play Lynchen to refill your hand, okay, I mean, even on turn 9, you go Pogo, Pogo, Barista, and you've got 2 new Pogos in hand. But outside of dreaming up scenarios where it's useful, I don't think that it's going to be practical. I honestly think that Barista Lynchen is not going to be a card that you're going to be able to use for anything more than maybe occasionally copying one low-cost battle cry. Most of the time, you are not going to be able to leverage this thing. And I realize even if you just copied one really expensive battle cry, like Chef Nomi up here or Archivist Elysiana over here, that's maybe good enough in some regards, but I don't think it's going to work. So my instincts are to say, and we are up to, how long? 49 minutes. Yeah, I've been going for a while here. I really don't think Barista Lynchen is going to work out, so there are my thoughts on the neutrals, and I am going to stop this sucker right here because we've gone on long enough.